What's up, 2K crew? It's Turbo. We got 2Ks on the horn as per usual. I guess at least recently it's usual, but it's kind of a weird time right now. Not a lot of sports content, as you can probably notice, and I refuse to talk about the cornhole on ESPN. And we got racing, and probably something that's up mine and 2K's kind of wheelhouse is some golf coming up. So there is some good news going forward about the sports content. But before we jump into that, 2Ks, how you doing, brother?
Oh, good. Not too bad.
Well, good, 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 good. And 2K crew, we're gonna let you in on a little secret. Next week, you're gonna have both of us back in studio. I don't care how if we upset anybody, but that's gonna be our kind of our us being a rebel, if you will. But we will both be back in studio next week to kind of give you a little bit better experience, and everything's trending on the calm, trending down. So figure what the hell, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. So yes, next week you don't have to just stare at this mug right here. You're gonna get the handsome one. You're gonna get 2Ks back in the studio. So before we jump into everything, I do want to remind everybody that look up Drop Anchor Tavern, 269 646 2525. Look up Drop Anchor Tavern on Facebook. Look at their menu. Get yourself a tavern chicken dinner, because my God, those are amazing. And for the price, you really can't beat it. So folks, help support people that support us. Drop Anchor Tavern. Look them up. Well, 2Ks, you and I were kind of going back and forth last night about what the hell we were going to talk about this week. And when I left your house last night, we still didn't really know what the hell we were going to talk about this week. But we're gonna
Yeah.
2K crew. We're gonna kind of throw you a little curveball here. With all the depressing shit that's going on in this country, we're gonna kind of take you back to our childhood, let you know where our love of sports came from, our sports teams growing up, our idols, things of that nature. Because I'm kind of running out of ideas, which is I picture I usually consider myself kind of a creative person, but with this much to work with, I mean, we're kind of tugging at the last strings here. But this will kind of bring you guys into kind of get to know us a little bit better, kind of see where we come from, which kind of might help you gravitate towards one or both of us. So 2Ks, let's start out with, what is the first sporting event you can remember watching?
Oh man. Let's think here. I guess for me, I can remember being real young, and it kind of a sport that we never really talk a whole lot about, but we have one, an arena really close to us, and that's going and watching K-Wing hockey games. It's kind of
True.
some of the first live sporting events that I watched as a kid. And it was 30 minutes away, so it was a close drive. It wasn't like you had to go very far. And going to those games as a kid, I mean, it was so much fun.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember, if we go back, I mean, I first started, like, I grew up in a baseball family. My dad played
Mm-hmm.
baseball when he was a kid. I remember, as soon as I could throw a ball and swing a bat, I was playing baseball. But I do remember I had to wait an extra year to play because of where my birthday fell. Seemed like every time you were going, through any sports or growing up, the age cutoff was August 1st. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when your birthday is September 14th, you kind of get fucked on that one. So I had to wait a year. But yeah, you know what, you're 100% right. I remember going to a lot of K Wings games and stuff like that. With I was in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and stuff like that, and it seems like we always went to some sporting event every year. I do remember I was upset because I got outvoted one year, because it was either a choice between going to see the Globetrotters or going to see the K Wings, and the Globetrotters lost, and I was kind of upset. I always thought that would be something that would be really, really cool to go to. I mean, especially as a, I want to say it was,
Especially back then.
yeah,
Back
yeah,
then when.
yeah, and just to kind of give you a like a time frame, this would have been probably 1990 to 92. So I was 10 to 12 years old.
Dang, that was 91's the year I was born.
Yeah, well, so, yeah, I can't help that you're just a young pup. You're just a young pup. But we
No,
also,
and like I talk about like my first experience of watching like professional sports being the K-Wings, but I mean obviously anybody that knows me knows that my dad coaches basically or at one time he has coached pretty much every sport at Marcellus. So I mean obviously from a really young age I was always around basketball, football, baseball. And that carried over obviously to when I was in high school. I played all three sports. But growing up, yeah, I really didn't have much of a choice. I mean, I was kind of living the life as far as getting out of school and going to all of his practices every single day, and then
Mhm.
also going to all the games during the season. So, yeah, I didn't really have a choice. I was kind of raised into being a sports fan.
Yeah, yeah, and it's I my experience was a little different because I was the oldest child, so never really got to whereas with Josh, my brother, he would get drugged to, of course, my practices or games and stuff, just because a lot of times, especially when I was probably I know all the way through high school, my dad worked third shift, so a lot of times my brother would have to go with my mom to away games or home games or whatnot. So he had a whole different experience when it comes to playing sports, and as opposed to me, I never really had to go get drugged to his games and stuff. Like I remember early on when Josh was in Little League, I used to umpire a lot just because I was there. It was fun. Why the hell not? And so yeah, I could see where on in your circumstance, you pretty much got brought up into it whether you wanted to or not. And
Hmm.
I'm sure just hanging around your dad, hanging around all those other the older athletes that he coached, kind of helped give you an idea early on about what teamwork is, and what how to handle yourself as an athlete, and what it entails, and the triumphs and the victories and the low the losing streaks and stuff like that, how to handle that. So I'm sure that gave you a really really good basis to kind of jump off on when you did get into high school and things started becoming more competitive.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And another thing that we used to do is we used to go down to South Bend and watch. It's been quite a different number of names, but the Silverhawks, and now it's the South Bend Cubs, and that was always a lot of fun. The stadium is just very inviting. It's very comfortable. The prices aren't anything outrageous. It's something that a lot of people can afford to go to, and you're seeing a lot of these kids that in all throughout the whole the little stadium. It'll have pictures and of the stars that came through there. Hell, Terry Francona was a coach there for a long time, and I didn't know that until a few years ago. But
Hmm.
they've got a nice little track record going through that little stadium. So it's kind of neat to see the history, who's been there, and just to watch some. Though that's the type of baseball that I really really like watching. These guys are hungry. They're not spoiled like the major leagues. Are you getting major league talent? No. But for the most part, these kids are still. I mean, some of them are just out of college, very green. But you can see, especially when you're watching a game, and you know there's a stud. Just the ball coming off of his bat sounds different, and it's neat to see kind of the separation between that. And like I said, hell, tickets for that are less than $20 a pop for really good seats. And K Wings is another thing too. If you're The K Wings have always been fun. I'm we've kind of documented it many times on here before. I'm not a huge hockey fan, but I will go watch a hockey game. I enjoy watching hockey live. On
Oh yeah.
TV, it kind of loses some of its luster to me. But live, I watch a hockey game. I would not turn down season tickets to the K Wings because it's fun to watch. And I remember a few years ago, I know they don't do the special anymore, but it was a Frugal Fan Friday, and it was tickets were hella cheap, and it was $1 beer and $1 dog. I mean, that to me, that's cheaper than A, going to a bar, and B, you get to watch some pretty good hockey because they're for a lot of years that or even these last few years, K Wings have been a good team. They've
Oh yeah,
competed for
definitely.
the title in their league for the last 10 years. So it's not like you're seeing a very bunk product, and they get to fucking fight. So that's the absolute fun part. That's the absolute fun part.
Hmm.
But as a kid, 2Ks, who were your favorite teams? Who did you? Was it the teams you first watched? Was it kind of a carryover from who your dad's favorite teams were? Kind of give the 2K crew a little bit of insight on how your fandom started.
Well, with the NFL, definitely. I was a Cowboys fan. Still am a Cowboys fan. That came from my dad. My dad had always been a Cowboys fan. And then when it comes to basketball, never really. I don't really have an NBA team. I like to watch college basketball a lot better. Obviously, um, I'm a Michigan fan. Uh, Basketball and football. I guess you can say I got that from my dad also. Um, and then you get into baseball. I can remember being really, really young, and baseball has always been my favorite sport. I've always had, a big time passion for baseball and watching baseball. I know to a lot of people, baseball is boring, but I've always been one that just has been able to break down a baseball game every time I'm watching it. That's kind of what I like about it is, it's a strategic game. It's almost like, a game of chess sometimes. But when I first started watching baseball, this is obviously before, Fox Sports Detroit was a thing. So it wasn't like you were watching Tigers games you didn't have the opportunity to watch a Tigers game very often. So I actually at first was a Braves fan because the Braves were always playing on TBS, and at that time, when I was probably 6, 7 years old, that's when you go back to the Braves having Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz, and then Chipper Jones, Andrew Jones,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean the list goes on. Great players on that team, and that was my first love when it comes to baseball was watching those guys. And then as I got a little bit older, my grandpa was a big time Tigers fan, and he used to listen to the games on the radio all the time. And I can remember being at his house, basically every day of the summer, and we would listen to Tigers games on the radio. And to this day, I still, I love the beginning of the season when the Tigers are playing the day games, and I'm at work, and
Mm-hmm.
I have a job where I'm working in a truck all day, so I always have the radio playing, and that the beginning of the season when you're able to listen to the Tigers on the radio, I just some when that's going on, it takes me back to being a little kid and listening to those games with my grandpa.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you are 100% right. Where there's a lot of people that even you and I, there's an age difference, but yet we're still kind of the same generation when it comes to the progression of sports on TV. And you hit the nail on the head where Fox Sports Detroit wasn't around. I remember growing up that I the few game because we we didn't have cable, we didn't have satellite. It was just like the 4 or 5 channels you get on the air, and it felt very we my baseball fandom started probably when I was 6 years old, probably 1985, 86, somewhere in there. And the few times we did get the Tigers games on, I wanted to I wanted to play for the Tigers. They were my team, and there's something it's a paper or something that I wrote in school, and my parents still have it because of course parents keep all that weird shit. But it was a paper that I wrote that said that I want to grow up to be a pitcher for the Detroit Tigers and a barber in the off season because I want to make sure I have enough money. So so yeah, that's kind of where I started with everything. And once we moved into town and got cable, it was kind of the same time period where my cousin Scott got drafted by the Braves. So we wanted to get cable and get TBS in case, Scott got called up. And I think he got called up one September and then ended up having trouble with his elbow and then couldn't rehab and come back. But yeah, he was a left-handed starter, probably hitting around 91 to 93 on his fastball. And of course, with that star-studded pitching staff that the Braves had back then, there was no chance of him kind of breaking through. So it was an uphill battle for him. But yeah, if I do remember correctly, he did get a September call-up, so he had his cup of coffee in the majors. And like I said, he had arm trouble that, this is, pre-Tommy John surgery, what it is now. So that was kind of disappointing, but that was kind of where, people our age or my age, their their fandom usually is, oddly enough, it's either we're Braves fans or Cubs fans because you got WGN and the Cubs are always on WGN. And
Mm-hmm.
or getting back to what you said with the games on the radio, you know, there's growing up especially, it seems like the Cubs always played during the day. So you would, if you're like in your situation, you'd listen to them in the car. I've had, a lot of friends with their grandparents had, their grandpa would go out in the garage and listen to them and dink around in the garage listening to either the, WGN and the Cubs or the Tigers. And there's still a lot of folks that, prefer listening to games like that over watching them. And I'm not one of them. I will. I have no problem listening to games, but I prefer watching them. But it's a different art form when you're listening to it, over just spoken word as opposed to actually seeing it in real life. So
Mm-hmm.
the dudes that do that and the Vin Scully's of the world, they had to paint a picture with their voice, and on top of that, keep everybody interested in between pitches, in between what's going on, and then knowing how to describe everything to kind of bring your listeners in to kind of make them feel like they're at the game. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's something that a lot of announcers can't do, and unfortunately it kind of takes away from the radio experience. Now the the guy that does the Tigers, he's been doing that for like ever, hasn't he? Or have they changed
Uh,
guys?
no, it's been the same guy for a long time. I know you're talking about Dan Dickerson.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I
he
can
does
never remember
he
his
does a
name.
very very good job.
Hmm. Yeah,
He does
they're.
a very good job.
I know a lot of dudes, especially when I was working at Drop Anchor. They'd come in and they, oh, got to go home. The Tigers are on the radio. Like I'm gonna have the Tigers on TV if you want to stay and watch it. He goes, nope. I just like to go in my garage and listen to it on the radio. Like, all right, cool. You do you.
Hmm.
So 2Ks. Well, we we kind of got your professional sports, and we kind of got your. With mine, I kind of told you my baseball. Football, I pretty much was. I ran around with a couple guys growing up that I'm not even sure where it all started, but there was three of us. Two of us decided we were going to be Notre Dame fans, and one of them, his dad was a huge Michigan fan, and with getting to know the culture of Notre Dame and a lot of their fans, they're kind of basically right in Chicago, so being a Notre Dame fan and a Bears fan kind of go hand in hand a lot of times. So that's
Hmm.
kind of where I kind of landed with that. But how I ultimately ended up being a Red Sox fan was this: is watching the Braves for so long and watching the Braves getting beat by the Yankees, and whatever team that I was rooting for in the playoffs would always get beat by the Yankees. I decided that instead of being a Yankee hater, I'd be a Red Sox fan, which to me is even worse than a Yankee hater. And I remember when the Red Sox won their first World Series, I got so many of my friends like, "Oh, you fucking bandwagon, you fucking bandwagon." I'm like, no, I've actually got pictures of when I was like 13 years old in a Red Sox hat and a Red Sox T-shirt. So don't tell me. And that again, give you a time frame. That was 1993. I'd be, there's no bandwagon jumping for this guy. I stick to a team, or, rain, sun, or shine. So yeah, that's kind of where a lot of my fandom started, and like you said, it had a lot to do with what was available on TV, what we were able to watch, and especially with Notre Dame, they've always been on NBC. So no matter
Mhm.
where you're at in the country or world, you can always watch a Notre Dame football game. You don't have to have the Big Ten network. They're just, you can almost always bank on them being on NBC. And I know things have kind of started to change a little bit, and they're on some ESPN, and they're on some the ACC network and stuff like that. But for the vast majority, all of their games, home and away, are usually on NBC. So unless they're huge games, huge rivalry games, and then they get put on ESPN or something. But like I said, for the vast majority, they're always on NBC, so they were very easy to watch as a kid. And thankfully, I had some very cool parents that let me, kind of indulge in stuff like that, because growing up, we had one TV that was hooked up to an antenna, and then we had a TV in my bedroom where I could play video games, but there wasn't any like TV hookup for it. So yeah, having some parents that, my mom just kind of was a fan because she was a fan of us. She really
Mhm.
didn't want, up until I think like the last for probably 10 years, she just started watching Notre Dame football again. And yeah, my dad and I could sit and watch baseball. Doesn't matter if it's little league baseball all the way up to, even some of the worst major league games. We'd sit there and watch them and love them and break down everything and talk about them. And I'm sure that's something that I could see you and your dad doing. Is just, it doesn't matter what baseball it is. We'll just sit there and watch it and enjoy it. Am I wrong?
No, no, not at all.
Yeah, and especially those. I could only imagine what those Little League World Series players, the emotions they're going through, because I remember being that age, and I don't, the the pressure some of these kids are under, that you can never tell. They're, but with me, I'd be a fucking basket case at 10, 11 years old, trying to win a, you've played for so long, you got to Williamsport, and you're all in it, and then the games start. I'd be a mess. I would be an absolute mess at that age for sure. I really didn't kind of come out of my shell or come into my own until probably sophomore year of high school, and after that, I mean, it seemed like it's one of those things where like life slows down a little bit. It's not as hectic, and but yeah, I couldn't imagine 10, 11 years old is, and knowing that people are watching all over the fucking world watching you play. That'd be crazy to me. That'd be absolutely crazy.
Hmm.
So we talked about teams. So now let's talk about players. Whose poster did you have? Posters did you had to have on your wall growing up as a kid?
Man, first one that comes to mind, because I know I had a big ass poster in my bedroom when I was little. I mentioned I was a Michigan fan. I had a Charles Woodson.
Hmm.
Was just a, I mean, only defensive player today to win the Heisman Trophy, obviously. But yeah, I mean, he's the first one that comes to mind. I never really had a lot of posters in my bedroom, but I guess if I going back, probably one player that I always kind of tried to model, or even when I was playing, I wanted to emulate everything that he did, and kind of do things the same way. Whether it was wearing the same jersey number, which I did, and then that's Derek Jeter.
Ah.
I played shortstop of baseball. I've said it, many times. I fucking hate the Yankees,
Hmm.
but Derek Jeter was always kind of, we played the same position, and he's one of the best shortstops, of my generation,
Hmm.
and so when I played baseball, I wore number 2. When I played football, I wore number 2. When I played basketball, we didn't have the option to wear number 2, so I wore number 22. And that was kind of, the big reason why.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember I remember going to DNR Sports, and or DNS Sports here in Marcellus. They used to have a little rack with posters on it, and every now and again I'd break down and buy one and replace one that was in my room, or maybe it was getting faded, or something got spilled on it. But I remember always having a Griffey poster up, and I remember, who else? Rocket Ismail. I remember having a couple posters of his. And oddly enough, and you're gonna make fun of me about this, I remember having a Chris Webber poster.
Hmm.
Yeah, and yeah, it was.
Better than your Notre Dame bullshit.
I don't think I've ever had a Notre Dame poster. I've had probably everything else Notre Dame, but I do remember having a Chris Webber, uh, a big ass Chris Webber poster, which is rather odd, and I'm trying to remember why. But yeah, that was for whatever reason. I mean, I'm even going through my cards here over quarantine. I found a handful of Chris Webber rookie cards too. So I obviously saved him for some reason. So maybe I had a little man crush with Mr. Chris Webber back in the day. But yeah, I remember having
Yeah.
a couple of Nolan Ryan posters, Walter Payton. Um, let's see. But yeah, you could walk into my room from probably the age of 10 until 19 when I moved out of my parents' house, and at every stage there would had to be at least one Griffey poster on it. So Griffey was my dude. I still is. I still love collecting his cards. Probably the sweetest swing ever in the history of baseball, and just an ultimate cool dude. You never heard anything negative
Mhm.
about him. In the age of PEDs, probably he would be the one to benefit from it the most, just because he was hurt a lot. And I've
So many injuries. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm you cannot convince me that if he would have stayed healthy the vast majority of his career, that he would be the home run champ and not Barry Bonds, hands down, hands
Yeah.
down,
It's hard to argue that.
and might go
Hard
down
to
as
argue
what.
that.
And again, staying healthy, he could have went down as maybe the best center fielder of all time, because just as he was just as good in the field as he was at the plate, and it's very you know Mike Trout is probably the only one that we could kind of even compare that to, being as graceful and just as balls out in center field, because playing center field is an art form. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And to do it at that level and at the plate, and just be just a monster. I mean, I can't imagine how difficult doing both of those are. So yeah,
Oh, yeah, and that's why you don't. That's why you don't see it today. You
hmm,
see, we saw it for years with Ken Griffey Jr. and now we're seeing it with Mike Trout. But most of the time, you see those outfielders that are, hitting 30, 40 home runs a season and driving in over 100 yards or 100 RBIs consistently.
yeah,
They're always corner outfielders, not
yes,
center fielders.
yeah,
So when you're playing, when you're a center fielder and you're doing that, that's where the whole five-tool player comes to effect, because those are the outfielders that can not only do what they do at the plate, but then to also on the other side of the ball, be able to run things down the outfield, and then also have the arm. And then Mike Trout obviously had, and Griffey too,
hmm.
obviously had better than average arms.
McCutcheon showed glimpses of that for a few years before he got
Few
hurt,
years, yep,
but
yep.
to do it, he's the only he's another one that pops off. He's a great guy. Was the face of a franchise. Injuries and just kind of a shitty team, to be honest with you, because when he was being a badass for the Pirates were in contention. The Pirates were an
Mm-hmm.
annoying team to play, and it seems like they just started falling apart. I mean, you had the one dude get popped for PEDs and get suspended for half a year, and then McCutcheon gets injured, and then they trade him before he walks, with his contract, and he's never been the same since, which is a shame, because like I said, he just seems like a very nice dude. There's never anything negative around him, and his play, especially in his prime. I mean, he carried that Pirates team, because there's kind of like Josh Bell does now. I mean, he's basically the only dude that if you're a Pirates fan, you actually want to go and watch, which is which is sad, because their stadium is absolutely phenomenal, and you got just which I guess if you look past the product on the field, from what I've heard and what I've seen, the farm system is very, very deep in Pittsburgh. So hopefully they get that turned around. But yeah, he's the only one that I can really think of off the top of my head who's a center fielder that will give you 30, 35 home runs and 100 RBIs and bat over 300, and has very has a 990 fielding percentage. So that's
Mhm.
just something you don't see. Like you said, the power hitting outfielders are generally your right fielders or left fielders, and your center fielders, one of the more table setters. And for because I mean, Mike Trout's Mike Trout. You can't tell me or try to argue that he's not the best player on the planet right now, and has been the best player on the planet for like probably the last 10 years. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's he. But yeah, that to kind of get back to the poster thing. If I was growing up in this day and age, I'd be the biggest Mike Trout fan. And I not to say that I'm not right now. It's just my initial fanhood, the people I broke in watching. It was Griffey. Griffey was my dude. I tried to collect everything Griffey that I could get my hands on. If Griffey sponsored a gum, I had to have it. I do remember the beef jerky you used to get in a can, and at the bottom they used to have like little quote unquote baseball cards that were in little circles. I had I ate so much damn beef jerky to get the Ken Griffey Jr. card out of that, and then I obviously have no idea what happened to it, but it was just something I had to have because it was Griffey, and he was my initial obsession. And now that I'm an adult, well, at least adult by age, not really by anything else, but I'm going back and collecting more of his cards and getting I'm it just his stuff, and that to me that's he's always been my dude. Of course, now a lot of if you're trying to do that with Mike Trout, a lot of his stuff, just the price is just unreal right now. But
Mhm.
who is your like your dude growing up? It could be baseball, football, basketball. I mean, your dude.
Oh man, I mean, I have a lot of them. I mentioned Jeter earlier. The things I loved about Jeter were, obviously he's local.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew so much about him just from local stories. And then, like I said, I hate the Yankees, but you can't argue that playing in New York, it's the hardest franchise in all of baseball to play for,
Yeah.
and let alone sit down and and basically be nicknamed the captain
Mm-hmm.
and play there for 20 years and be one of the all-time great Yankees, and that's to be in that list of the all-time great Yankees is that that says it right there. And then he played his entire career with a lot of guys that brought drama around him, but he never really was in any of that drama. I mean, you go back to a little bit of the him and A-Rod
Yeah.
shift that went on, but I think that was more media driven. It wasn't really anything. I
No.
don't think it was anything real serious. But he just avoided everything. He just showed up. He was consistent and he played. And when it was all said and done, yeah, to me he's one of the best shortstops to ever play the game. But then I can't argue Ken Griffey Jr. either. I've said it. I've always said he was one of my all-time favorites. I just had more of a connection with Jeter because I played the same position as Jeter.
Right.
And that's really the only reason. And then I look at it to the NBA. Like I've said it so many times, I wasn't old enough to really watch Jordan, but Kobe Bryant was. In my time, it was Kobe Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan was done, and Kobe was kind of the next closest thing to ever being Jordan. So he was one that I can remember having Kobe shirts. Always having to have always wanted the Black Mamba T-shirt, stuff
Yep.
like that. Or I wanted to wear the Kobe shoes for basketball, and then going into football. Man, I guess if I had to pick a player in football that I paid attention to so much, it would obviously be Tom Brady. I mean, he is the GOAT. I mean, when it comes down to it, as far as NFL quarterbacks, and then obviously him coming from Michigan. So I got to watch him quite a bit even before he even made it to the NFL. And I mean, I have to admit, I never expected him to do anything that he has done in the NFL.
Right.
Back when he was at Michigan, but to kind of be that forgotten guy in that draft, and to be drafted in the 6th round, and to do what he has done in the NFL, it's just crazy to me.
Yeah, I think if you were to poll each and every one of the other 30 or 31 NFL teams, I think they would have taken a flyer on Tom Brady back then. I didn't, so you were definitely not the only one that didn't. I'm sure Tom didn't see it coming either. It was
Yeah.
it just so happened that he got drafted and that's why if you look at Joe Burrow right now, the reason Cincinnati's pick number 1 is because they fucking suck. And is Joe going to help him get better? Absolutely. Is he going to go out and win a Super Bowl next year? No, not at all. Not at all, because they're a bad team. You don't get the number 1 pick by being a good team. It's not the NBA with the lottery. And, with the Spurs pulling Tim Duncan and David Robinson at the same time, and it's different in the NFL. But, yeah, I'm sure if you would have, if you'd send a little note to every one of the NFL owners back then and said, hey, would you, looking back at that draft, would you take a flyer on Tom Brady? I'm pretty sure all of them would say yeah. I'm pretty sure. Now, had he end up being the same player without Belichick and that system, who knows? I think we're going to get a little glimpse of it this year. And so that's to me, that's going to be very, very important to watch and kind of see how everything unfolds on both sides, with the Patriots side and the and Tampa Bay side, to see how each one of them do separately. What I did find weird was the Vegas odds came out for the favorite for the Super Bowl, the favorite for the MVP, and the Bucks came back at number 8. The eighth, when it comes to teams that win the Super Bowl, they were number 8. Very slightly behind them, number 9 were the Pats. So Vegas is pretty much banking on Belichick being Belichick, even without Tom Brady, to put them the 9th best team to win the Super Bowl, or the best probability to win the Super Bowl. So I thought that was rather interesting. I figured they would have Tampa Bay even higher than number 8, and have New England lower than number 8. So, but Vegas is Vegas, and they're pretty much experts. They don't lose money that often. So either they see some analysis, or they have some different ideas for what's going to go on in the NFL this year. So, but
another name that I got to throw in there. I would be upset if I didn't get this one out there, because I kind of totally forgot about him. But going back to baseball, I mentioned earlier that I was I started off as a huge Braves fan. So another player that I just absolutely loved, and probably was maybe my first true favorite player, and that's Chipper Jones.
I was going to say Chipper. Chipper or David Justice was another one off those teams that I really, really liked.
Mm-hmm. But just growing up in Marcellus, obviously it's a small town, farm town, and it doesn't get any more farm hick town than Chipper Jones, and that was
Larry.
That was what I loved. Yeah, what I loved about him in the very beginning is, he was just the farm town guy. I'm also a big time outside of sports. I like to hunt a whole lot, and I can remember watching like hunting shows, being a really young kid, and Chipper Jones was hunting on the shows, and I was like, man, this guy's fucking cool.
Him and young
Chipper,
Adam
Chipper
LaRoche.
Yeah.
Yeah, LaRoche came up as a Brave too. So him and Chipper have had a very long-standing friendship, and yeah, they like to kill stuff. They really do. They really like to kill stuff. So, but yeah, I was a huge Chipper Jones fan, because like I said, TBS, and they hit it was very. Ted Turner knew what the fuck he was doing, because he put together this team that he knew he could put on his TV network and pretty much force the whole nation to watch this team play. And it worked, because there's Braves fans all over the country, not just in and around Atlanta. You can't really say that for like Tigers. I mean, unless you're from Michigan or you spent some time in Michigan, or if you some random way you get Fox Sports Detroit, I'm almost going to be betting you're not a Tigers fan. But if you were to poll, you know, if you took 1,000 households from all over the country in the late '90s, I guarantee most of them knew who the Braves were, could tell you who Chipper Jones was, tell you who Greg Maddux was, just because of TBS. So Ted Turner wasn't a dummy. He's not a millionaire by chance. There's actually some brains behind that and some very good marketing. So kudos to you, sir. Kudos to you. And WGN's the same way, which I'm kind of shocked that WGN's kind of giving way to another TV station when it's coming to the Cubs. And I'm assuming the White Sox for both of them, but yeah, they're not going to carry as much or even any Cubs or White Sox games on WGN anymore. Which to me, those the what is it? Chip and fuck, I can't remember the guys' names on WGN now, but I really enjoy listening to them. I don't know if they're going over to the new station or not, but if not, they're gonna make watching Cubs games a whole lot less enjoyable because those two guys are pretty amazing. And on top of that, they were way better than the Tigers because don't get me started on them fools. Oh my god! And I'm so glad that something happened when Rod and what was the other dude's name? The God's gift to baseball.
Mario.
Yeah, Mario and Rod. I'm so glad they're
Yeah.
not. They annoyed the shit out of me. Annoyed the absolute shit out of me. And
But they're fucking worse. They're worse now. I mean,
yeah,
I thought I
yeah,
wasn't ever really big with Rod and Mario either, but now, it's pretty bad now. And I think maybe I just have a terrible attitude about them because obviously I'm watching a shit product every fucking time I tune in.
right.
But so I'm already pissed off. But man, I love Gibby. Don't get me wrong, but fuck, he's just not good at it. He's just not
No,
good at it. He's
no.
not good at that. And
10 years. I mean,
and even same thing could be said for Morris. I do not. I just don't think that Jack Morris is good at it, and it also pisses me off. And I've said this to you so many times, but pick a fucking team, Jack.
Yeah.
I mean, are you gonna work for the Tigers? Or are you gonna work for the fucking Twins? Are you gonna be throwing the first pitch out for the Blue Jays? I mean, who's your fucking team? I mean, if you're gonna work for the Tigers, then be with the Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
And so. And at the same time, I think he sucks anyway. So it's like just fucking go to Minnesota. Just do your thing with the Twins.
Well,
And so I don't know.
every time they introduce him, they have to introduce him as Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
No shit, we all know it. We all know it. And yeah, Hall of Famer Jack Morris. Just shut the fuck up. If I was him, I wouldn't want people to introduce me like that. I'm me, Yeah, it's just irritating to listen to for every fucking time, every fucking time. And I'm glad Hawk Harrelson hung it up. He was another one that annoyed the shit out of me. The man knew his baseball, but it's just the way he delivered everything was annoying as shit. I'm glad there's no cans of corn. I'm glad that you can put it on the board. Yeah. I'm glad that those phrases have been hung up because to me it was just too much. I know there's some White Sox fans out there, Christian, some White Sox fans, Frank, that probably are going to disagree with me on that one, but
yeah, and that's what I was going to say. He's one of those guys to where, if you're a White Sox fan, you fucking love him.
Oh yeah,
I mean, you just do, and he's not dull.
No,
he's not dull at all. But
no.
when you're on the other side and you're listening to him, there's no doubt that he's he's all about the White Sox.
Oh,
and
huge homer.
He doesn't give credit to anybody else. It's just all about the fucking White Sox. And so yeah, I mean, when the White Sox were good, it was like, yeah, he's fucking annoying because he was like cocky about it. But then when the White Sox were bad, he was even probably a little bit more annoying because he tried to talk like the White Sox were fucking good. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, you guys are not good.
Yep, you are 100% correct. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Hit the nail right on the head. Yeah, it's like that guy, like Brett Gardner. I can't stand Brett Gardner for the Yankees, but the Yankees love him.
Mhm.
And if he was a Red Sox, I'd probably love him too, like Kevin Youkilis. I really liked Kevin Youkilis, but it seems like everyone else in the league that wasn't a Red Sox fan hated Uke, hated the fuck out of him.
Yeah.
And
Oh well, I changed my mind about him when he fucking charged him out on Rick Purcell. And fuck, that was when I was like, what a douche.
But yeah, it seems like there's always that guy. No matter what team it is, there's always that guy that everyone else hates because he's not on your team. So it just so happens that with the White Sox, it wasn't a team. It wasn't a guy on the team. It was the announcer. I couldn't stand him. But yeah, diehard White Sox fans. I mean, he's the best announcer ever. So maybe it's something like that. I don't know. But yeah, when we're talking about announcers, the Tigers need to get their head out of their ass because there's no better way, or the only worse thing to have than a shit product on the field is people describing the shit. You have to have some sort of reason for people to watch, generate some enthusiasm. Um, Otherwise, that dude's not doing the job to keep the audience entertained because obviously the players on the field aren't doing their job to entertain and give the fans something to cheer about. So that's where the commentator or the play-by-play guy has to spice it up, has to do his job to make sure that he's engaging with the audience to keep everybody interested. Otherwise, people aren't going to watch. And I'm pretty sure that last year, Fox Sports Detroit probably had a very down year from what they're used to because A, the announcers weren't really that great, and B, the team wasn't that great. Now,
Oh, absolutely.
with me, I would much rather watch a bad product on the field and listen to and just mute the announcers. I'd much rather do it that way than have an announcer that sucks and a good team. And to me, there has to be like holding hands with one another, and sometimes the announcer has to take the lead and lead the team, and there's other times where he just shuts up and lets the team do it. And we have lost 2Ks. Here we go. What's up, man? I was talking. I was like, we lost 2Ks, and then you just dialed right back. But no, what I was saying is that the announcer and the team they have to work together. When the team isn't doing well, it's the announcer's responsibility to, kind of take the lead and lead everybody towards the goal. And then there's times when the product on the field is what's important, and he just shuts up and lets them do the talking. And for the past probably 10 years, there's always been people talking in the booth for the Tigers when it just sit back and let them kind of do their thing, especially when they were good. And we don't need Rod Allen telling us how great Justin Verlander is. We know. We watch him. And you're not Mr. Baseball. I mean, you couldn't even hold a job in a Japanese league. So I don't want to hear your fucking input on some things. But it's so hard to find a good combo. And as much Bob Costas, I mean, he's not my favorite dude in the world. But him and John Smoltz, I kind of like together. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And Smoltz knows his shit. And he's a very good color commentator. And the one that I wish they would give another chance to would be Mark Grace. He was actually really good at it until some extracurricular activities kind of limited his or stopped his broadcasting career. So hopefully that time will pass and he'll be able to get back behind the mic because he was very entertaining. His personality was just bubbly and he knew his shit. So hopefully he gets another chance because I really, really thoroughly enjoyed him. So as far as announcers, 2Ks, who do you really like?
Man. There's a lot of them that fucking annoy me, especially when it comes to baseball.
Yeah, I agree.
one that really stands out to me, and I'm not a much of an NBA fan at all, but I fucking love listening to Van Gundy
Yeah.
when he starts going off in those games. I mean, he's actually like one of the only reasons why I tune in to listen to NBA games is just to listen to him.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you that one.
But going back to the baseball side, you mentioned Smoltz. I love to listen to Smoltz. And then I can remember watching. You don't see him anymore, but with ESPN games when they had Kruk, I used to really like Kruk.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I think a lot of people were. ESPN. They just, I don't know. It seems like every time they're constantly switching who's doing their games around. And it's like, you get a good one. When you get a good one, why don't you just fucking stick with them? For a long time. But they're constantly changing them, and now it's to the point where I don't even really want to listen to the games.
A-Rod,
but Kruk is one that
A-Rod doesn't do a bad job. He does. I'm not a super fan of his.
But he's just a douche.
Oh yeah. But when he's doing the play-by-play for a game, I don't hate him, but I don't like him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I tolerate him, which is fine. His voice isn't irritating. But yes, is he a douche? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No one takes pictures of themselves kissing themselves in the mirror and not be called a douchebag. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You might be saying, Turbo, that was years ago. Well, fuck, people don't forget. Sorry. No. No, it's like the same way if you pooped your pants at school in second grade. People don't forget that either, man. You always be the kid that pooped their pants in the second grade. Well, you know what? A-Rod's the douchebag that took pictures of himself kissing himself in the mirror. So, but yeah, I mean,
yeah. Another one that I think is really, really good at his job, and he's been doing it for a long time now. But when I think of analysts that basically he's the very first one I think of when it comes to a sport, and I think he's the best at it. He's not a homer at all. Actually, I would say that he probably doesn't give enough credit to his alma mater, and that's Herb Street.
Yeah.
When it comes to college game day and college football, I just think as far as knowledge goes and just a voice for it, I don't think there's anybody in the business that's better than he is.
And you're 100% right in that he's not a homer. He doesn't just, because I mean, Desmond's a good analyst. I mean, if it comes to picking against someone against Michigan, he's always going to choose Michigan. Whereas Herbie, if he thinks the team's going to beat Ohio State, he'll tell you that they're going to beat Ohio State.
Yep.
There's
and he's taking a lot of heat.
Oh, 100%.
For not
100%
all the time.
It's like asking Lou Holtz who's going to beat Notre Dame. Nobody. No. The Kansas City Chiefs against the 2020 Fighting Irish. Who's going to win, Lou? Well, 2020 Fighting Irish. No, I'm sorry, they're not. No, I mean the YouTube crew. You can see the ND flag in the background, but when it comes to that, I'm sorry. I love Lou Holtz to death. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. Lou's been one of my favorite Notre Dame people associated with Notre Dame since I can remember. But sometimes is he very unrealistic? Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure every Notre Dame fan out there will fucking agree with me. So, well, you don't have to be a Notre Dame fan to agree with me on that. But, well, 2Ks, we've kind of taken a trip down nostalgia, down memory lane, and are there any little roads or offshoots that we haven't touched upon, or did you want to throw some little extra in there?
The last person I mentioned, because I never really mentioned, a coach or a manager or anything like that.
Okay.
And for me, it's, obviously I missed out on, on the 80s baseball with the Tigers, and when the Tigers were really good. So then there was a good, at least 10-year span there where the Tigers were fucking terrible.
Yeah.
And
we refer to those years as the Bobby Higginson years.
Yes. And when they made the hire and they brought Jim Leland into town, that was when the culture of Tigers baseball changed. And now I will always think about this, that they had so many opportunities to win a World Series under him, and they were never able to get it done, and that makes me so upset because, Jim Leland, he's a Hall of Fame manager. In my opinion, right up there with, possibly the best manager for the Tigers all time. And just to bring them out of the funk that they were in there for so many years, and to change the culture around, he's what brought baseball to Comerica Park, because at the time Comerica Park had never seen, good baseball.
Yeah.
All the other good Tigers teams were back in, at the old Tiger Stadium. So when Comerica came around, they never had they couldn't even, a brand new stadium, and they couldn't even put fans in the stands. And it seems like when Leland came into town, they were able to start, bringing other players in.
Pudge.
Obviously bringing some of their own players in, and the culture around Detroit, and especially around Tigers baseball. I mean, they went, so many games in the season where they were filling that place up, and it was, and they were in the playoffs every single year. They made runs. They played in. They had 2 World Series, appearances, and it's too bad that they never got it done. But going back to, me kind of going, I think when he showed up there, I was probably in middle school, and then was able, to watch him all the way through high school. But he's the one that really changed the culture of Tigers baseball for me, and made it to where, even today, the Tigers are my favorite sports team that there is. And I know that we're in a hole right now. But I think eventually the Tigers will get out of it.
Oh yeah.
But,
oh yeah.
There's not a day that goes by where I'm like, man, I really do miss, Leland being there. And he was just fucking funny also, this old bastard that's smoking cigarettes in the dugout. And,
smoking heaters in the dugout, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It was him and pretty much the first signee was Pudge. And with those two, and then there was Fernando Vina, I think was the second one, but he never really panned out with injuries and stuff in Detroit. But Pudge was the first big signee. That was the first big free agency splash of Comerica Park, and you just that kind of started the riptide for all the upcoming Tigers teams. And had it not been for Pudge signing, Pudge made it cool to play baseball in Detroit, hands down.
Yep.
Between him.
Yep. Oh yeah, and it was after Pudge is when when Maglio came aboard, and that's what and it made it more appealing for a lot of other players to to come there. So.
Yep, and then you had paired with some very good draft picks, and Justin Verlander and a lot of other kids that they've brought up, and through the farm system, and the big trade to bring Cabrera over, and wasn't it the same? No, it was a different trade that Scherzer came over, and Scherzer was came from Arizona. He was a bullpen dude, and once the Tigers got him, had to send him down to AAA to get his shit together, and then he came back the next year and won the Cy Young. So Scherzer was basically just a throw-in for, I'm trying to remember the trade that involved the Diamondbacks, but it just he was one of the throw-ins. And
yeah, I think it was like Scherzer and
Daniel Schlereth.
I know that. I want to say that might have been, was it Edwin Jackson that was in on that trade?
Could be. It was
Edwin Jackson. I know Didi was one of the names in it that went to. But yeah, it was. The Tigers definitely won the trade. I mean, there's no question about that. And then you look at the Cabrera trade, and the Tigers are trading away, Cameron Maybin, who has just been a serviceable player for his entire career. He's actually back with Detroit now.
He's very streaky. He's always been very streaky.
Yeah, and then the other player that was in the trade for Cabrera was Andrew Miller, who at the time was a highly touted starting pitcher, but anybody that follows baseball knows that he kind of held it down as a bullpen. Going back to when 2016 World Series, when the Cubs won it, but they won it over Cleveland. Andrew Miller was kind of the workhorse out of the bullpen for Cleveland that year.
Andrew Miller's become, one of the, when you think of closers or, just lockdown bullpen guys, he's definitely one of the top 5 you think of in the past 10 years. And
and I mean, and Andrew, very good in the bullpen, and like I said, maybe serviceable, but there's no question who won that trade. I mean,
hands down. Yeah,
you
cannot argue
that. Done for Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but it would have been. if they could have kept Andrew Miller and put him in the bullpen, then you might have had a ring. You might have, but I really don't. I really don't think you could have got. You could have pulled that trade off without putting him in there. So,
No, no.
but 2Ks are up to or actually right at an hour now. So it's been fun talking. Like I said, taking a trip back into memory lane, bringing some nostalgia on the 2Ks, the 2K crew. And hopefully now they can kind of see where our fandom comes from. And so when we do get into discussions about, who our favorite things are, they'll have this episode to kind of look back on and be like, well, you're right. And if one of us jumps off and jumps onto a bandwagon, now it's public record so that any one of the 2K crew can be like, no, will you please check May 31st, 2020 episode, because Turbo, you said this, and you're now a Cincinnati Reds fan. And I'll be like, oh, fuck, you're right. I did say that. So it'll hold us accountable too. It'll hold us accountable too. Well, 2Ks, unless you got anything else to add, we'll
Nope.
we'll give another shout out to Chris and Gary Zeed and the staff over at Drop Anchor Tavern, 269-646-2525. Call and get you a burger or some chicken, whatever you get. Everything. They have a quarantine menu available right now. However, I did see on Facebook that this weekend they are having a chopped steak with mashed potatoes and gravy special. So call in your order, reserve one, and tell them that Turbo and 2K sent you, because we like to support people that support us. 2K crew, have a great week. And as always, Jim Rome, we're coming for you.